Hello and welcome to the second episode of Credit Management Functionality Review in Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operation. In the first episode, we talked about how we can configure a system to automatically suggest customer credit limits for us. In this episode, we'll talk about how we can automatically put sales orders on hold. In order for us to do that, we will review parameters needed to be configured. We will then talk about blocking and exclusion rules. And then we will put it all together by creating multiple sales orders with different rules in place. First, let's review the parameters. Navigate to Credit and Collections, go to Setup and Credit and Collection Parameters. From there on, let's click on the Credit tab and let's expand Credit Management Checkpoint tab. Out of box, we have 5 triggers that will check rules and decide whether or not the sales order would have to be placed on hold. For this example, I have activated these checks on the sales order confirmation posting and generation of the picking list. So both are activated. You could also apply the same checks on the pro forma postings. There is also grace days that are defined here, and you can see that it has 2 for both confirmation and the picking list steps. And I will explain what those grace days mean later in the video. From there on, we'll have to review different blocking rules. So let's navigate to blocking rules under Setup, Credit Management Setup. We have 8 different categories for which we can create blocking and exclusion rules. We can create rules based on the invoice days overdue. We can create rules based on the account status for the customer, terms of payment, expiration dates of the credit limit, overdue amount on sales order invoices, sales order totals, and the amount remaining on the credit limit. So let's review a simple example. Let's create a new rule under Credit Limit Expired section. I will click New. I will say that this rule should be applied not to a specific customer, not a group of customers, but all the customers. But in order for me to limit my selection, I will say that this rule should only be applied to the customers that belong to high risk group. And this rule will block sales order if the customer qualifies. And the second criteria here will be a number of days that the credit limit was expired. And let me say 10 days. So what that rule basically says is there are 2 conditions. First condition is the customer has to belong to the high risk group. And second condition is that the customer should have credit limit expired for more than 10 days. If those 2 conditions are met, then the sales order should be automatically placed on hold. I'm going to save this rule. And now let's review the customer that we will use in our scenarios. All the customers. The customers that we will use for this demonstration will be US 017, Turtle Wholesales. I will expand the card. And what I will do here is scroll down under Credit and Collection tab and make sure that the credit limit that is currently set to 1 million is expired for more than 10 days. So let's say it was expired on March 1st. Let me save those changes. So now we know that the first condition has been met. Now let's think about the second condition, which means customer should belong to the high risk group. If you watch the first part of this series, you will know that we can define multiple risk groups and then automatically assign customers to one of those risk groups based on the number of points or the score that these customers have. So let's review the score that was calculated for this customer. I will navigate to Credit Management tab and click on Risk Score. I can see that based on the 2 scoring groups that I have defined, I have a score of 45 plus 50. So I have a total score for this customer, which equals to 95. And then if I want to understand what risk group this score puts that customer to, I will go and check the risk classifications, Credit and Collections, and then risk classifications. And then I see that any customer that has score from 61 to 100 would belong to high risk group. And I know that this is the case for my customer US 017 because this customer has a score of 95. Let me go back to the customer And based on our review so far, we understand that this specific customer satisfies two conditions for our blocking rule. It belongs to the high-risk group, and its credit limit has expired for more than 10 days. Now let's test it. Let's create a sales order for this customer. I will go to the list of all the sales orders, click New to create a sales order, select my customer account, click OK to create new sales order. I will use item 1000 that has a sales price of $120. Save that sales order. And now I need to trigger the check. And you remember that one of my triggers would be posting of the sales order confirmation. So this is what I will do. I will go to the Sales tab, confirm sales order, and I'm going to click OK. So I'm going to post that sales order without printing. First of all, we see the error message, and if we click on the message details, we see that the order has been sent to credit management. And we see that the sales order confirmation failed to post because we don't have any sales order confirmation journals right here. The second thing is that we can go to the credit management tab and click on credit management hold list. And we will see that we have one active hold number 17. We see the active checkbox checked. And we know that this specific sales order is on hold right now. If we would like to know the reasons for that hold to be created, we're going to click on blocking reasons in the top left corner right here. And we see the reason that this hold was created is because of expired credit limit. Let me close this form. We will come back to that form to review all the options that are available here. Another thing that I would like to clarify here is that credit management holds are separate from existing order holds that were there prior to credit management update. What I mean by that, if we look at the sales order header and we see that the do not process checkbox is set to no, and if we go back to the sales order tab, order holds, we see that standard or legacy order holds were not created. It was strictly credit management hold that was applied. So those two holds are separate. I think they should be combined at some point in time, but at this point, Microsoft decided to keep them separately. Let's go back here. Now, let us go back to our blocking rules and let us create an exclusion rule in the same credit limit expired category. So I'm still in my category right here. I'm going to click on New to create a new rule. Another thing that I will say here is that if you keep a table here, the system doesn't really prompt you to enter a customer account. If I can save the rule here, and it doesn't really ask me to specify the customer account in this field. So I think it's one of the bugs that should be fixed in next releases, I guess. But that's what I would expect. If you see a table, I think the entry of the customer account should be mandatory. But I'm going to say, in this case, I would like to create a rule for a group of customers. Now the question is it for the customer group, is it for the price group, or another group on the customer record? So the answer is here, this is for the credit management group. This credit management group can be used to define a credit limit for a group of customers, but in this case, I'm going to use this group to define an exclusion rule. So I will select that this rule should be applied only to the customers that belong to credit management group 900. And then I will say it's not going to be really blocking rule, it's going to be an exclusion rule. And right away, when I change it, you see that this operator has changed to less than or equal to. And then I will say, let's say 100 days. What that means is there are two conditions. If the customer belongs to customer credit group 900 and its customer credit limit has expired for 100 days or less, then we should exclude that customer from order hold. I'm going to save that rule. And now let's review the customer that we are using right here. So credit limit has expired on March 1st. So it's really less than 100 days because right now is April 4th. So that's number one. And number two is that we see that this customer belongs to the credit management group 900. So we just confirmed that this customer qualifies for that exclusion rule. So let's test it in action. We're going to create another sales order right now. So now we see that sales order confirmation was posted successfully. Here it is. If we look at any credit-related holds in this list right here, it should be blank. So we just confirmed the exclusion rule has worked. Let's go back to our blocking rules again. And now what I would like to do is to create an exclusion rule, but in a different category. So I'm going to delete this exclusion rule from credit limit expired. Yes. So now I still have a blocking rule based on the 10 days expired credit limit. But now I will navigate to the terms of payment category, and I will create an exclusion rule that says, let's exclude the customers from blocking if their payment terms are net 45. And I'm going to save that. So now I have a blocking rule under credit limit expired section category, and then I have an exclusion rule under terms of payment category. If we look at our customer, we can see that the customer default payment terms are net 45. So it definitely qualifies for that exclusion rule. But at the same time, it qualifies for that blocking rule based on the expired credit limit. So let's test it in action. So we see that the sales order confirmation was not posted and our order went into credit hold. Let's check it. Here's our list, blocking reasons. It was put on hold because of the expired reason. So what we can conclude from here is that if the exclusion rule and the blocking rule are into two different categories, they will not cancel each other. So in this case, customer qualified for both rules. And because the exclusion rule was in a different category than the blocking rule, exclusion rule didn't really cancel the blocking rule. Now we will review another example where it actually is an exception to what I just said. So what I will do here is I will go and delete this exclusion rule based on the payment terms. Delete. I will then go and create another exclusion rule under a different category. In this case, it will be that sales order category. So here it is. I'm going to click New. Again, it will be applied to a group. Which group is going to be applied to Credit Management Group 900. It's not going to be a blocking rule. It's going to be exclusion rule. And what I will say here, if the sales order is less than or equal to 200, then this exclusion rule should be applied. At the same time, I will also check that release sales order checkbox. Now let's think about what's going to happen. So what that rule says is there are two conditions. If the customer belongs to Credit Management Group 900, which we know that our customer does, and the sales order total is $200 or less, then this exclusion rule should apply. But we also check this release sales order checkbox, and what that tells system is cancel any other applicable blocking rules and make sure that this sales order is released and is not placed on hold. So this checkbox overrides any blocking rules from any other category. And we definitely have another blocking rule under credit limit expired rule, right? So let's save those rules and let's test it by creating another sales order. So here's my brand new sales order. If I check the total for that sales order, I see that it is $120 right here. So definitely under $200. And we know that this customer belongs to that 900 group. So let's post sales order confirmation here. We see that we have successfully posted sales order confirmation, and we know that there are no credit holds that have been applied, right? Just because we have this checkbox checked. So now, for us to confirm it, let's go back to our rules, and the only change we will do now is just uncheck that release sales order hold and save these changes. And now we will test again. We have brand new sales order, same item. So now we have a brand new sales order. We have $120 as the total. And now we will go and trigger the check of the credit rules. Confirm sales order, post it again. So now we see that the order went on hold again. We can see it under this list right here. and we click on blocking reasons, we see that it went on hold because of the expired credit limit. So what we can conclude from here is that without that checkbox checked, we're back to the situation where we have blocking rule and exclusion rule in two different categories, and they did not cancel each other. So it's quite important to understand the meaning of that checkbox when you create your blocking or exclusion rules. All right, so now let's test one more scenario where I check this checkbox again, but now I will say that the sales order totals should be $100 or less. Save these changes, and we're going to test it once more by creating brand new sales order. So the total for that sales order is $120, and we're going to post sales order confirmation. We see that the sales order confirmation did not post, and we now also see that we have the credit limit applied, it's active, credit limit number 20, and we go to the blocking reasons, and we see it was because of the expired credit limit again. So what we understand now is that that exclusion rule that would have canceled the expired credit limit hold did not really apply to that sales order because the sales order total was more than $100 that we have defined. Now let's take a look at things that we can do with active order holds. This is a list of all the order holds that are applicable to that specific sales order. You also have a view that shows you all active order holds for all the sales orders. One thing that you can do is you can evaluate for release. What you basically asking system to do is say, let's check the rules again to see if that hold is still valid. You may have changed the rule, you may have added an exclusion rule, you may have changed the credit limit expiry date, you may have gotten some payment from the customer. So there may be different things that had happened in the system, and now the reason for that hold might not be longer there, right? So you can actually manually trigger the check to see if that hold is still valid, right? Because we have not really changed anything, the system will not remove that hold for us. You can also reject with a reason. So what that will do is we'll cancel the sales order with the reason code that we specified right here. And what we're interested here is we're gonna release that sales order. Of course, we'll have to provide the release reason code as well. And then we have an option to release it with posting or without posting. When you release it without the posting, the system will just deactivate or release that hold for us, but we will then have to manually do our next steps. For example, posting that sales order confirmation that failed to post in the first place. If we are doing the release with posting, which we will do right now, the system will prompt us to post that sales order confirmation right away because it knows that we were not able to do it initially. So now we're back to posting sales order confirmation, and I'm going to click OK. Once you do that, you will see that the sales order confirmation will be posted and the hold will no longer be active. It's still going to be there, but it's not going to be active. That means it's not going to block us from any other next steps. Let's close this form. Let's go back to the sales order. Now let's talk about those grace days that we have defined under our credit and collection parameters. So you remember that I have defined 2 days for the sales order confirmation and 2 days for the pick and list posting. What are the meaning of those? Those days define a number of days for which the sales order hold that was previously released by the user will not be applied again. So, in our case, we posted a sales order confirmation and the system applied expired credit limit hold for us. We'll then manually release that hold, deactivated that hold, and posted a sales order confirmation. From there, we have 2 days to do any steps that would check the hold rules again. And within those 2 days, the same hold will not be applied. So what I mean by that is I have 2 days to do my sales order confirmation posting and the pick and list posting. So let's check it out. I will then go and post a second sales order confirmation. And because I'm doing that within grace days, within 2 days from the release of that sales order hold, the system will not reapply the same hold again. You see that I have posted my sales order confirmation again, and I don't have any active holds created again. I still have that original hold, but it's no longer active right here. And the same thing goes to the picking list, right? Picking list posting was one of the other actions that would trigger the check for my holding blocking rules. But because I'm doing it within 2 days, 2 grace days, the system will not apply the same hold again. I cleared that expired credit limit hold, so it will not apply it again. If there were any other holds that were applicable, the system would still create those, but it would not create the same hold that I just cleared. You see right here that I was able to post the picking list without any errors. And the last thing that I wanted to mention here is I found a small bug that did not allow me to specify ranking for my payment terms and my cash discounts. There is another blocking rules that exist natively that allow you to put a sales order on hold if you change payment terms with a higher ranking. So for example, you had a net 45 terms that had a ranking of 10, let's say, and then you manually change these payment terms from net 45 to net 15 on that sales order, and the net 15 terms had a ranking of, let's say, 50. So the net 15 has a higher ranking compared to original payment terms ranking, and the system should have placed that sales order automatically on hold. So in order for you to use this functionality, you first have to assign the the ranking to all your payment terms. And if you try to do that right now, you will go to Setup, Rank Payment Terms right here. So here you see the list of all the existing payment terms. You cannot create new terms here. You can only just assign the ranking. So if you try to assign a ranking of, for example, of 10 to cash and try to save that change, you're going to get this reference table ID must be filled in error. I bet it's a very small bug. It's a very easy problem to solve for a developer. But at this point, in this Wave 1 2020 release of Dynamics 365, that error is still there, and you will not be able to assign rankings, and therefore you will not be able to test that functionality. So I hope that this issue will be fixed soon, and users would be able to use this functionality to block sales orders based on the ranking change for the payment terms. That is all I wanted to show you today. I hope you found that useful. Until the next time.